some back keeping. Still got a minute left. Has the search been going pretty good so far?
I guess we'll see. I mean, we haven't seen any of the candidate names yet.
Wait 1 second. We're live. Okay, we're live. Getting ready to get started here.
Let's get it. This that go and get it. With no hesitation. This that never quit. Got that elevation. This that process.
Good morning.
This that started from the bottom. This that motivation.
We're starting with a little morning motivation song for you all.
All I know is win. Feel like Gary Payton. This that process. This that
We have our District 3 rep, Sarah, in the building, Broward County School Board member, Sarah Leonardi. Happy to have you here with us.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
So, Sarah, listen, we're starting off the morning bright and early on a Friday. We're doing this on a Friday. Normally we do this on Wednesday. So it's a great time. Friday is normally my budgetary day here at Community-Based Connection. Just trying to make sure all the checks and balances are in order. But look, we're happy, we're excited that you are here joining us, and thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. There's a lot happening at the school board level, and so to those who will be joining us right now live, please hit the share button. Community-Based Connection on Facebook. Thank you all for tuning in. Just want to take this opportunity to talk about Community-Based Connections. Community-Based Connections for over 12 years have been providing youth development support for our educational system, and as well as family preservation, fatherhood support, and mental health services. Look, we're so happy to have our District 3 rep here with us today. And I got to tell you all, we in some controversy topics this morning. We're gonna find out why Sarah's in the fight. We're gonna find out what's going on with the superintendent search. There's a whole lot for us to discuss this morning, and we're excited. So we're live, y'all. We're live, and Sarah, I want to jump right into it. You've been doing quite a bit out here. Fight for different issues for small businesses and everything else. What's going on with COVID, what's happening in Tallahassee. I'm just so excited I can't contain myself. So instead of going on and on and on, Sarah, I think the most important for our viewers, you've been a pretty big support of Community-Based Connections and the work we're doing in our community. But we also, Community-Based Connections is always strategic about its partnership and those we align ourselves with. And because you've been an ally, it have really helped us in so many ways collectively, and we thank you for your support. But Sarah, for our audience who don't know why you support Community-Based Connection, for our audience who don't know what made you run for school board and all this other great stuff, what made you still, sometimes I watch these school board meetings, I say, wow, they're just there for 12 hours. And some days it's 18 hours, depending on what's going on. But I want to take this opportunity for you to tell us, who is Sarah? Who is this District 3 rep? Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us the stuff that people don't read about in the journal, in the newspaper.
Well, first, I really just want to thank you for everything that you do for our community, and thank you for taking the time to have me on today. It's a real honor. So thank you, Mike. So I'm Sarah Leonardi, and the school board member for District 3 here in Broward County, which covers a little bit of Pompano, a lot of Fort Lauderdale, Oakland Park, Wilton Manors, and it actually goes all the way down to Dania. It covers a little bit of Dania. And before I was a school board member, I was elected in 2020. So before that, I was a teacher. I went to the University of Miami, and I got my degree in education in English. And I started I started my teaching career down in Florida City, actually at Homestead Senior High School, and then I moved up to Broward about a year and a half after that. And I was teaching in Broward schools until I ran for office. And I ran for office the first time. As a teacher, I saw a lot of things happening in our school system that I wanted to try to change, and I wanted to go beyond the four walls of my classroom and really try to uplift student voices and educator voices, and really have some representation on the board for those people, because that's what we're here for, is our kids.
Mm. Well, you talk about a few things there, because I think those, I used to have this, my high school basketball coach, who's actually assistant principal right now, Elvin Hazel. He always say a leader must emerge, right? And early on when he first said it, we always be like, man, he always saying this. And as you get older, as you get into more opportunities in your life, you start seeing it, right? You're part of that story. A leader must emerge. And here you are being a school teacher and say, hey, I want to do more. Like, this is not just it for me. I think there's a reality that you're also a parent, right? Mm-hmm. And so you want to see the future of this where you feel comfortable putting your kids in that school system and see the progress of it. So let's talk a little bit about, you talked about, being in the school system, making a change. Why is the change so significant? I mean, we had a high level conversation just now, but why the change that you see for District 3? And I know you only don't see change for District 3, right? Because I have heard you fight for causes in other districts, right? So why is that fight in you so much? Why are you in the fight?
Because I think we can do better. I think that as long as there's room for improvement, and as long as there's kids not getting the services they need, and as long as there's, employees who need to be paid a decent wage, I think that we have an obligation to do something about it. Mm-hmm. And I think about that a lot when I'm, thinking about doing this again for another term, and that there's work still to be done. And that's, that's really why I think it's important that people get involved. And, I can sit back and complain all day, but if I'm not trying to do something about it, it's really kind of a waste. I really don't have a place to complain. And that's, kind of why I ran for office the first time. And why I continue to fight for, you mentioned fighting for schools that are not in District 3. Our eastside schools have been neglected for a very long time. And, even if it's not a school in a district where people elected me, I have an obligation to do right by those kids, and those kids who have been neglected for a long time. And I've worked in those schools. I worked at Coconut Creek High School. I have an investment in our entire Broward County community, not just in District 3.
No, that's amazing. It's always good when a leader can see outside of their district as well, because we know there's impact, right? There's triggers that happen. What may impact one side eventually can impact another. And so the reality of that is that we should have our eyes all over the place, right? Because we know policies travel, right? It just we don't create policy for only District 1 or District 2 or District 3. Policies are created for the whole district. And so thank you for shedding some light on that. Look, I want to kind of get into two hot topics right away. The first one, I think there's been a lot of conversation about promise and what's going on with promise. And, we hear so many things out there. And I know there's still situations that are being worked out, conversation that's being worked out. And I'm sure we'll see this on our next board meetings and so forth. But do second chance still exist in Broward County schools?
I think they will. I think that as the program, as we reform some of our discipline policies, second chances will exist. I think that, Dr. Smiley is taking some time, and staff is taking some time to look at how we can improve how we deal with discipline in Broward County. But I also think, we're dealing with children, and children obviously do deserve second chances. And so I'm not sure, where the district is heading clearly just yet, but I certainly will advocate for second chances for our kids because there are no bad kids. There are kids who, have a lack of opportunities, who have a lack of resources, and they absolutely deserve second chances.
Yeah, I think that's a real honest question, right? As controversial as it may sound, because I always tell people I'm where I am today because someone gave me a second chance, right? There's no, and let me go a little bit more deeper. I was that kid who been suspended from school before for getting to a physical altercation, right? And so I know that someone gave me a second chance, right? And what they did not do is say, you don't deserve a chance, right? And if all of us would just be honest, we all was given some form of a second chance in our lives. In some cases, third or fourth, right? And even today, as adults, we see adults makes bad decisions and we give them an opportunity to self-correct, right? And make better chances moving forward. So thank you for hitting on that because we want to make sure that we want to make sure everybody know that all children deserve the best and deserve a second chance, right? And so that's the reality. And so I want to get into the next one because, why is it important? Because we're talking about second chance, but we have services like community-based connection that exists in our school system, really empowering and impacting. Because I'll tell you, community-based connection probably spends nearly $1.1 million in resources just in after school alone. In fact, thank you to our supporters of Church Service Council of Broward County, United Way of Broward, and Community Foundation, so many much more partners and corporate partners. We have launched Market Hub Zone in partnership with Broward County School Board District, Principal Dukes, and so many other people. These services exist, and there's other nonprofits that's doing great things in a school system as well. But why is it important to partner with schools partner with organizations like Community-Based Connections for you?
I think the really simple answer is, there are things that the school system cannot do, services that the school system cannot offer. And community-based connections, you, Mike, are heavily invested in our community and have been for a lifetime. And our community, how to make those connections with people, and you help reach communities or provide services that Broward County Public Schools cannot offer. And you really look at not just even the whole child, but the whole family. And so it would be a disservice for us to not partner with an organization like Community-Based Connections. When you look at what you all do with, helping with family strengthening, supporting fathers and male figures and families, academic performance, you do so much. And, it's really incredible. And, I really hope that we can improve that relationship that we have with you, because you can reach parts of the community that we just can't, and in ways that we can't.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you for those nice, kind words. The ideal is to make sure that all our children not just prepare for the next grade level, but prepare for trade school, prepare for college, and also prepare for being a professional, right? Because as I tell high school students and college students whenever I get a chance to speak to them, look, you're not just preparing for whatever career you're going to, but you're preparing for life. You're preparing to be a father, a mother. You're preparing to be a significant partner, or whatever the case may be. You're preparing for something. And you want to be the best version of yourself every day that you show up. But we can't be good students if our home is not empowered, right? If mom is struggling, dad is struggling, if I'm not eating at night, I can't show up to school and learn the next day, right? So I remember, and most people don't know this, and I think this is where we connect at. I remember working at a nonprofit and going into the schools and being an educator. and facilitate different programs and information for our students. And I'll watch students who was hungry and couldn't learn. And so literally I would give them, money to go to the vending machine and provide food for them, or say, hey, here's some lunch money, right? Or whatever the case may be. So we have real issues in our school system. We have issues that, to your point, the school system can't solve. So it takes partnership like community-based connection for the school system to help solve it, right? Because those collective partnership makes a huge difference. And having larger partners like a Children's Service Council of Broward County that have invested in the work that community-based connection, or the United Way of Broward County, or the Community Foundation of Broward, as well as ChildNet, right, is about really making an impact for families, so we can have a whole student, right, who's showing up emotionally, showing up physically, financially, spiritually, so they can be the best version of themselves. So Sarah, listen, I think there's another heated topic I want to get into, but before we get into the superintendent conversation, what are some things you accomplished since you've been a school board member? Because to our listeners who may not have engaged with you, share with us what are some of those things that you have accomplished already.
So one thing that I'm really, really proud of is, I think it was just like 3 or 4 months into my term, Rickards Middle School, which is in Oakland Park, the roof collapsed during the school day. And that's not what I'm proud of. But what I am proud of is that there were conversations about what to do with the school post-collapse. And just several months later, we were able to secure almost $70 million in funding to build Rickards Middle School, a brand new school. And at the board, we often talk about, whether or not to invest in under-enrolled schools in Broward County. And a lot of those schools are on our east side, and a lot of those schools service a majority of Black and Brown students. And the conversation historically, especially before I got on the board, was, well, why should we invest in those schools? They're under-enrolled. And these are some of our most neglected and vulnerable schools. And I think it's so important that we show a commitment to the community by investing in schools and by improving those facilities. Because a lot of times parents don't want to send their kids to a school just because of the way it looks. You don't want your child going into a school where, you see mold on the walls and things like that. And so we were able to secure that really significant funding, is historical for the east side, to build Rickards Middle School, a brand new school. Another piece that I'm really proud of is that Stranahan High School, that community has been begging for a new cafeteria for decades now. The current cafeteria at the school was originally built decades ago for an elementary school, when Stranahan was just an elementary school. And I think it was during my first year in office, we went from doing a renovation to the cafeteria to doing a full replacement. So now Stranahan High School is getting a brand new cafeteria. Again, an under-enrolled school, but the board has decided, and I fought very hard with community members to make this happen, to invest. I think the cafeteria is going to be almost $20 million in Stranahan High School to get those kids, a space to eat that they can feel proud and safe in. So those are just 2 small things that I'm really proud of. And those were things that I really wanted to do when I was a teacher and running for office. I really wanted to focus on providing quality facilities on our east side for our kids.
Oh, wow. That is just amazing to hear that our kids can have a safe and beautiful place just to even gather to eat. That's the quality, those actions are taken, because, I often talk about, our bond project and seeing the improvement of it, and so, and speaking of those who are doing this work for our kids to beautify the school, in a nutshell, that takes small business partnership that's in our community, right? And so let's talk about that. Tell me about how important it is for the school district to partner with local minority-owned businesses to help create an economic engine here, because the school, correct me if I'm wrong, but the school system is probably the largest employer right now in Broward County,
We are.
right? But you also have some of the most significant contracts that you put out every year in Broward County. Talk a little bit about why partnership with small businesses are important here in Broward with small businesses.
Yeah, and I want to be honest, that is an area that we really, really need to improve. And the board has definitely given direction that we want to really move in a different direction where we are increasing drastically the amount of contracts we put out to small minority owned businesses. So that's definitely an area that we need to work on. But I think, there's definitely been a consensus on the board that we need to focus on that. And the reason why it's so important is kind of why what we were talking about earlier, why it's important that we partner with organizations like Community-Based Connections. People who live in Broward, who are invested in Broward County, who have grown up here, who have their businesses here, they care a lot more about what happens in our schools and doing good work for our schools than people who are out of state, and they can real time see the impact that they are making on our kids. And a lot of times their kids go to our schools.
Talk about it. Yeah. Yeah.
And they have a personal investment in making sure that the work that they do is quality work and it's done on time and it's not wasting taxpayer dollars. And so for me, those are the reasons why it's so important. And like you mentioned, we are the largest employer in Broward County. We have an obligation to keep tax dollars in Broward County and like you said, powering that local business engine. So, it's really, really important for a lot of different reasons. And it's an area that honestly we need to improve in.
For those who just joined us, we're here today with Sarah, District 3 rep for Broward County School Board. Listen, having a real front porch conversation with a glass of wine, as I like to say it. This is a great opportunity for those who may be a supporter of Sarah that's joining us for this call. Community-Based Connection have been around in our county for over 12 years, providing mental health support, providing early childhood development, providing after-school support, STEM coding debate, and as well as family preservation through our kinship and fatherhood initiative and family strengthening. Thank you to some Community-Based Connection powerhouse sponsors and funders. Look, we got to thank FPL. We have to thank BBS Capital, Church Council of Broward County, United Way of Broward, and as well as Community Foundation of Broward and ChildNet, Broward County Human Service Department as well. Listen, we're here with one of our sponsors, our supporters. I can say a whole lot about Sarah right now, but I won't because we're going to get ready to go into the next conversation. So this is a good time for you to share this live that we're doing. I want to take this opportunity also to highlight that, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us at CBCI brunch last week as we promote resources, raise funds for early childhood education, and how we continue to strengthen families across Broward. So thank you so much. I want to just publicly say that means a lot to us and with the work that we do. And so it's not that you're just showing up with words, but you also show up with contribution and supporting our agencies. And so everybody knows nonprofits are always looking to raise money for the work that we do every day to impact our students. Look, Sarah, we talked about Broward County being one of the largest employers, right? We talked about why it's important that the contract, not just large employers, but you are also one of the largest contractors who gives out one of the largest contractors in the county as well. I got to tell you, there's a lot of moving pieces. We talked about, the second chance still exists in the school system, right? But a leader, we talked about leader must emerge in these kind of times. And currently right now, we need a leader to emerge, right? We need a leader to emerge. And Dr. Smiley has been doing a great job where she's at. And she have been, changing a lot of great things and making a huge difference in some shape. And, regardless of folks' popular belief, everybody stand towards a position, but we know eventually the goal is to hire a full-time superintendent, right? Who can take the next 20 to 30 years of our school system in the right direction. I got a few questions about this. Look, I got to tell you, I'm excited to ask you this. I've been waiting to get through the soft stuff, to get to the hard, the meat and potatoes. We want to get to the steak of this. Let's talk about superintendent. First, let me ask you this before we even get where we are in terms of the search. What do you look for in particular in the superintendent?
So I look for someone who is honest, and who can be real about the problems that we have, acknowledge them, and then commit to fixing them. And I think sometimes we don't want to talk about the elephant in the room and talk about the issues that exist in the school system because we're afraid of bringing more attention to those issues. But for me, I think it's really important that we are honest about the things that we need to work on, like increasing our investment in minority-owned businesses in Broward County. So first and foremost, I look for an honest person who's willing to confront the problems that we have. Second, it's very, very important to me that this person has a proven record of providing equity-based policies and making those happen and making them effective in a school system. And so not just focusing on our high-performing schools and not just running around touting those high-performing schools, but really showing how that they can invest in and improve the services offered at some of our more vulnerable schools. So those are the two things that are really, really important to me. But at the same time, it's very important to have community input and have all voices at the table to hear about what everyone cares about for selecting the new superintendent. So, we are having a workshop on Tuesday where we'll be selecting the final candidates for superintendent. We should be getting the names of those people soon. And I think it's very important that we have a diverse set of voices at the table, not just, the same people who keep showing up to board meetings, who are incredible advocates for our school system. But, I think it's very, very important that we hear from everyone.
Yeah. So we're talking about this new superintendent, right? And so you talked a little bit what you would like to see in terms of a superintendent that can operate with integrity, right? But we have real issues. And so if we're asking for this superintendent to come on board, there's some challenges that we see across the county that sometimes that can pin one side of the county against the other, and the superintendent is caught in the middle. And I know you all as board members oftentimes have to make these tough decisions on behalf, being guided by the superintendent. So we talked about integrity with the superintendent, but what is the highest thing on your list that you would want the superintendent to accomplish?
There is an achievement gap that exists in Broward County in terms of academic performance. And I think for me, as a teacher who worked at, Coconut Creek High School, who worked at Westwood Heights Elementary, making sure that our schools that, have lower school grades, that they have the services that they need. And we went through recently a very, very controversial boundary change process for Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. And a lot of folks in Coral Springs were upset at the boundary change because they're going from a school that is an A school. Now they're being forced to go to a school that is a C school. And that C school offers some really great programs. But when we're talking about things like a boundary process, I made the point, it's very important that, we look at our C and D and F schools and think about what can we do? What do they need from us to improve the services they offer our kids? And it not just at one school, but district wide. And so that people aren't feeling like, they're being taken from one school to another and they're not going to get what they were going to get at the other school, and not pitting communities against each other. And so for me, that's probably the most important thing that for this superintendent to address is achievement gap and making sure that all of our schools are desirable places to send our children.
For those who's joining us, we're here today with Sarah Leonardi. our District 3 rep for Broward County School Board, just hit on a very touchy conversation. And as I still hear the information being provided regarding this, this kind of, I got to be careful how I say this kind of mixture between the city of Coral Springs and the city of Parkland. Clearly, there's some challenges there, and we know that you all are doing the best you can as school board member. I don't envy you in those kind of situations because I know at the end of the day, you all are seeking to make the best decision possible. Let's go back to another question about the superintendent search. Was this just a national search, or was this a local search? What do you, from your experience and from what your experience have taught you, what do you think the board is looking for collectively as it relates to whether it's going to be whether it's had been a local search and national search? What kind of synergy that is happening, if any? Because I know when you have 9 people in a room and all leaders, a whole lot can be said, right? So are we looking at a local national search that was done? Do all the board members have the same energy around the same kind of perspective as it relates to what they want in a superintendent? Where are we on that?
Yeah, so it was a national search that was done. We hired a search firm to do the national search, so that it was advertised nationally. With that said, local people could apply. So we'll see. I haven't seen the list of names yet, but we'll see the kinds of people we got to apply for the position. The board workshopped the qualities that we were looking for in a superintendent, and there was some disagreement, but I think there was a larger commitment. One of the things that we did agree on was finding a superintendent who has a proven record in terms of providing equity in our schools, someone who has experience in a mid to larger size school district. I can't say, I don't know what some of my colleagues are thinking in terms of, do they want to go local? Do they want to go national in terms of the candidate that they want to select? But in terms of the qualities that we're looking for, we didn't really disagree on the qualities that we ultimately ended up choosing. So, I hope that there is synergy. I think sometimes we're a very fractured board, to be very honest. And I hope that the conversation around selecting the superintendent can be a more unifying conversation, because, again, to be very honest, with the previous superintendent, there was a lot of division when it came to selecting that individual. So I think we're really craving some unity in Broward County, and I hope that in this selection process we can find that.
Yeah, we're seeking some unity out here in the community. We would like to see our board collectively see more agreements than disagreements, right? You talked about equity. I know earlier we talked about businesses and what equity looked like for those, especially those small minority business. But there's oftentimes an undercurrent conversation that is happening. Is there really equity in our school system? Right. And I know this is a sensitive topic for some, but it's a real for those families that we serve here at Community-Based Connection, that oftentimes in their minds, schools on the east side of town don't receive the same level of resources as the schools on the west side of town. And I personally, and those who I collectively work with through these charitable organizations, equity is important to all of us. And I think you see more people leaning towards private school. Obviously, there's certain bills that's coming down from Tallahassee, and I want to get a chance to maybe talk about a bill that you keeping your eye on. But there's certain conversation being had that equity is no longer important in our school system, because vouchers are being handed for now that you can take your kids to whatever school they want, even charter or private school, right? And so we know the impact that can have on our public school system. So can you talk to me a little bit about what does I guess the real question is the public education future is secure as it relates to being equitable and keeping our core group of kids in our public school system?
Yeah, I'll be very frank. I'm extremely worried about the future of public education in the state of Florida. You mentioned kind of tangentially the voucher bill that's coming down from Tallahassee. I think that's going to have some really destructive impacts on our public school system and on equity in the state. Because really, so what they're talking about is offering an $8,000 voucher for children to go to whatever school that they want to go to. But find me a private school in South Florida that is $8,000 a year.
Yeah.
So the people who can utilize those vouchers are the people who can also fork up an extra few $1,000s to pay for private school tuition. So the people who are going to be left behind in our public school systems that, by the way, these vouchers are going to defund, are going to be the people who can't afford to send their children to private schools. The other piece of that is this voucher bill. Private schools don't have to offer services for students who are in ESE programs. So if I have a child who has autism, right? I send that child to a private school. That private school is legally not obligated to provide my child any services. So as a teacher, I saw a lot of times children with IEPs or 504 plans who went to private schools, came back to the public school system, and for years had not received the services required by their IEPs or 504s. So again, you're going to have children children with disabilities coming back or left behind in our public school systems that again are being defunded by these voucher programs. You're also going to see some of our higher performing schools with really incredible magnet programs. Those programs are going to be the first to go, with the defunding of these of our public schools through this bill. So I'm very concerned about the policy coming down from Tallahassee in terms of allowing public school districts to provide equity in our schools. And, for me, equity is not everyone gets, the same amount of resources. Some schools need more resources than others. And that's why organizations like Community-Based Connections exist, right? Because you're able to offer those extra resources to our families who really, really need them and frankly deserve them, right? So I'm sorry I can't give a more optimistic response to that, but I am very, very worried. And a lot of it has to do with the policy coming down from Tallahassee.
Yeah, I think there's a significant concern among all parents right now. In fact, there's some organizing that is happening. I guess the question is, what can parents do right now to fight more? Because, like you said earlier, there's parents that cannot afford the difference in that private school money, right? Because the voucher may cover $8,000. But there's another $8,000 that some private school just added because they know there's a voucher coming out, right? Yeah. So talk to me about what can parents do? Maybe in advocacy, or maybe just, making a phone call to someone. What can they do to fight for the public school system right now in this moment? Because as you just mentioned, there's a crisis right now for public schools. And some of the more insignificant, jewels of public school, magnet programs. I'll be the first to tell you, I went to Pompano Beach High School, which during the tornado era. It's currently in the tornado era, so I wasn't a bean picker. But in the tornado era, we went to school 4 days a week, but it was the most gruesome, intensive time, right? And I went off to college being ahead because I had that magnet school ground training, right? So what can parents do? The parents we serve every day, what can they do?
So, I'll give a very simple thing to do. I would call your state reps and state senators and just say, we really want our strong public schools to continue to be strong, and urge them to be against these bills that are coming down, and urge them to invest in our traditional public schools. But something else that I want to talk about, I live in Pompano. The elementary school I'm zoned for is Cypress Elementary, and I talk with parents in my neighborhood all the time. They're worried about sending their children to Cypress, and I just ask them, go visit the school. If you go inside that building, it's a beautiful building. There's murals everywhere. It has this incredible Spanish immersion program. Just visit your schools if you're skeptical about sending your children there, because oftentimes, you hear things out in the community, but you need to see for yourself the kinds of things that are going on in our traditional public schools. So I just ask parents, to give their traditional public schools a chance, and to go see what's happening there, to see if for your own eyes the incredible things that are happening. So I think on a political advocacy side, contact your state reps, contact your state senators, because they're the ones who are going to be voting on these bills. But on the other piece, go out on a limb and try to trust our public schools and go see for yourself what's going on.
So obviously I got to be a little bit controversial, because we're in this space right now, and I know we don't have a whole lot of time left, but I got to ask this, because there's one side to the story, right? And then there's another side. And that other side is those parents who say, look, my child deserves to go to a better educational system because the public school system have lacked equity for my child. We don't get the resources we need, So there's this other side that I have to speak up for, that says, listen, I love the voucher idea, right? That's what the other side is saying, right? Michael Bell is not taking a position on this. I'm just saying what we're hearing from other parents who said, my child deserves the best quality education. If private school is it for them, then that's where I want to send them. What do you say to those parents who says, hey, this is my reality. This is what's happening. Here's what I witnessed over the years for my child. And maybe I had 2 kids who went through the system and they didn't perform at the top level, but I have this third one who may be able to do it now with a better environment. What do you say to that parent?
So first, when I ran for school board the first time, I was not a parent. I got pregnant and had my first child during my first term on the board. But something that I've always felt is I am never going to judge a parent for making a decision in the best interest of their child. And so if you need to use a voucher to send your child to a different school because you feel that is the best thing for your child, I have respect for that. And I think that those kinds of conversations are difficult conversations to have, especially around like charter schools. Like, I don't necessarily agree with the way charter schools have played out in Florida. But again, if you feel that school is the best school for your child, by all means, you need to make that decision for yourself. And you can't make your decisions for your children based on, politics, right? So first and foremost, I think it's important for people to feel empowered to do what they need to do for their children. And I think that's also why school choice is important. We talk a lot about school choice. In Broward County Public Schools, we have school choice. We talked about some incredible magnet programs, right? So I think the one thing that, again, I will ask parents to do, if you have not done so, because this happens in my neighborhood all the time, right? People just hear things about the school in their neighborhood. They've never stepped foot on that campus. So all I ask is go see for yourself what's happening in those schools. And if you don't like it, all respect to you for that, and do what's best for your child.
Yeah, I think that was pretty authentic of yourself to state that way you did. I actually, this last question, because you talk about parents, taking their kids to these schools, go take a look, go see for yourself. Forget what you heard. Go see for yourself. With this new superintendent coming on board in the future, how do we rebrand Broward schools, right? How do we change the narrative about our public education system? Because look, we all know I can call out a school right now. People be like, "Yep, I'm sending my child to that school," right? Whether it's private school, public school. Like if I say, "Hey, St. Thomas University," people be like, "Yep, St. Thomas, I'll send my child to that school," right? If I say Palm Beach High School, oh, yep, that's the lottery. That's a heck of a school. I'll send my child to that school. Or Victoria, the school in Victoria Park, right here off of Broward Boulevard, right? There are some schools that have this, that has a brand that speaks for themselves. But it seems like we need to do an overhaul across all the schools so it changed the narratives for our schools, right? Even those schools that have these names, and people haven't take a step inside to even see if there's been a difference. What do we look like in terms of changing the narrative for our school in the future? And can we count on you challenging the incoming long-term superintendent to change the narratives for our schools, to help fight to change the narrative for our schools?
Yeah, and this is something that I've been talking about since I got on the board, which is we need to be very aggressive in the communications that we're putting out. And we really need to do like a whole marketing plan around our public schools. And I think this is something that Dr. Smiley is looking to start. And I think she wants to set it up for the next superintendent to continue. But, you know, there are great things happening in all of our schools. We're just not talking about it. And I think it's very easy. And this is part of the reason why I did choose to run for office again, which was, you know, it's very easy to sit back and say, well, all these things are going to happen. You know, certain people have power. I don't have power right now. I don't have a majority right now. And so I'm just going to sit back and let this happen. Like, why even try? You know, some of our schools are under enrolled. Why even try to increase enrollment? I think we can either make that decision to sit back and watch all of this happen, or we can stand up and fight for what's right. And that's why I'm going to continue to do this. And I've seen some really awesome principals go, you know, they go door to door in their neighborhood and try to convince families to send their children to their school. And you know what? Enrollment increases in those schools because parents then see, you know, a leader at that school invested in that community, who you know is begging to provide services for their children. So I think we need to be very aggressive in the communications that we put out, but also, you know, go door to door and talk to families about why Broward County Public Schools is the best option for their child.
Yeah. Well, there's so much more I can get into, but we're all out of time, y'all. And I gotta say this, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us on this call this morning. We all know Fridays is busy days for many of us. We're trying to, you know, close out the week strong. But thank you for being authentic. Thank you for sharing your true thoughts. If people want to be able to connect with you, how can they connect with you via your school board emails and so forth?
Yeah, so my email and cell phone number are on the school board website, but my email is sarah.leonardi@browardschools.com. My cell phone is 954-412-9188. So those are the best ways to reach me. I have social media platforms that I should engage with more often. But my cell phone, my email is the best way to reach me.
Yeah. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us on today. For those of us who joined us, thank you so much. We are happy to be here with Sarah Leonardi, our District 3 rep. I got to tell you all, this was a wonderful presentation. Please share it, get the word out. There's changes that's coming. Show up to these meetings as it relates to looking for the new superintendent, because your voice matters as well. The narrative of your school in your area where you live matters as well. And so today was a special presentation with my good friend, Sarah Leonardi. Look, I'm so excited to be a good colleague, a good friend of yours. And I know we're going to continue to do great work together. And so thank you, Sarah, and continue to be encouraged as you fight for all children of Broward County. Y'all, this is it. Tune in next time. Next month, we have a special guest that will be coming on next month. Grant Galuppi, where we had our brunch. He'll be joining us in the month of May for our C-suite. And I got to tell you, you're going to want to hear what he has to say. So thank you all. Until next time, follow us on Community-Based Connection on Facebook, Twitter, and as well as Instagram and LinkedIn. Community-Based Connection, website communitybasedconnections.com, and that's connections with an S. So send us out, Tony, with the spiritual motivation. All right. Thank you all.
All I know is when I learn from my losses, I won't do that shit again.